Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers, and this is Module 6, and we're ready to start texturing. So this is part 2. So I'm going to go to File, New, and we're going to go into PBR Metallic Roughness and make sure we find our file. And I've got Low Poly Food Can New, so I'm going to click on Open. And we're going to do 4096. We're also going to make sure we select Use UV Tile Workflow and select the Convert UV Tiles into individual texture sets. Click OK. That will open up our food can. We can see that we've got our UDEM tiles up here, 1 and 2. One's for the label, one's for the top of the can. We do not want to ever rename these. That will really mess things up. It won't work. Okay, so do not rename that stuff. You can rename the layers, whatever you want to down here is fine, but do not rename these. Each one of these UDEM tiles has its own layer. So if I go to 1001 has its own layer, 1002 has its own layer, and so on and so forth. Now we can go into mode. This is going to be something new for us. We're going to go to Mode, Bake Mesh Maps. And here's our cage that you can see. If I open that cage up, you can see that it's yellow. I can turn that cage off if you don't want to see that. Anywho, that's just something that you can have as a visual. I don't really care either way. Here's our UDEM tiles. They're all set up. Everything's good. What do we need for mesh map bakers? We need to have normal, but we do not need to have world space normal. We do not need to have, we don't need to bake ID maps, so we're good. We want ambient occlusion, curvature, position, and thickness. Really, we only need these for if we know we're going to use smart materials, and we're not going to, but I'm going to bake them anyway so you guys can see what they look like. Output size, we want 4096, and dilation width we'll keep at 32. We want to use a high poly definition mesh, and we're going to click on the high poly food can new, okay, and then we're going to click open. Okay, and we can see that high poly food can new is inside of the low poly. Okay, so we're going to see how that bakes. Now, if we see lines all the way across here, then we're going to have to go back into Maya and make sure we don't see those lines that are poking through. The top looks like it's going to be okay, but we'll find out when we do our bake if it's going to look okay. So those are little things that we might have to go back for, okay? So frontal distance and rear distance, we're not going to try that. That might help with the errors right here if we do see errors. If not, we're fine. Otherwise, we can try to bake these textures again. It won't take long. It takes no time at all to do this. So let's go ahead and click on Bake Selected Textures at the bottom. Okay, it looks like it did okay, but we're going to go to return to painting mode. Okay, and it looks great. We got exactly what we wanted. I couldn't be happier. I don't see any distortion at all. In fact, our bake is fantastic. In fact, we can see that nice edge on top. Wow, I am impressed. And you should be too. Anyway, so anyway, it's always nice to see a good bake. So we're lucky, I guess, that way. If something happens or something goes wrong with yours, you can do a couple things. Like I said, you can change the frontal distance to 0.5 if you have some issues. But it should bake out okay. If you followed my videos, you'll have the same exact can that I have. So hopefully everything went well. Just make sure the high poly and the low poly are occupying the same space. That means the high poly can is underneath the low poly can, and make sure you delete the history and freeze transformations of both cans before you export them separately out. Okay. So look for that too if you have any errors. All right, so with that said, what do we do now? Well, we're ready to texture the can. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the top of the can and do that first. So the first one would be, I'm going to go use, let's see, what would be the best one? Metal brushed. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag that right on top. And I don't want to see, I want to see such a lot nicer, you know, the can is brushed, but it's not that heavy. So I'm going to go into the attributes of this, okay? So we're in 1002, that's the top of the can, you can see up here. So tiling, let's bring that down quite a bit. To where it looks like it's just kind of dirty on top, like fingerprints and stuff. So I'm going to bring that down quite a bit. And that's where it looks like it's kind of been touched with dirty hands. So that's really super small. So we barely see those scratch marks. And you can even go, I think I went to 12 when I was messing around with this thing. There it is. That looks much better. It gives you kind of a not perfectly shiny and all that stuff, but it looks good, so you don't see that grain so much. And then metal variations, get a little bit closer and closer. Of course, if you hold the shift key in your right mouse button, you can move that light around to really see it, how it's reflecting. So kind of give it an angle like that, and then metal color variations kind of move around. And the metal variation is really strong this way. That would be if the can is older. We want it to look pretty new. So we're going to pull that back a little bit. I do want to see a little bit of difference, you know. I don't want it to be perfectly clean, you know, and reflective. I mean, that would be a super, super new can. And maybe it is. And you can do that if you want to, okay? That's fine. Just kind of play around with it. But I don't want this really super dirty either. So let's just bring that just a little bit. Just show a little bit of distress there. I think that makes it look a little more real. Okay. And then as far as metal roughness, okay. Now this would be like if the can has no shine or reflection at all. We don't want that. That looks terrible. So let's bring that up. We also don't want it to be perfectly like a piece of glass. So I'm gonna do mine at around 0.11 probably. That would be good. And we can see some distress in there, which is nice. It's not reflecting perfectly. So you can see the clouds right here. But if I go perfect, you can see the clouds and everything. And I don't really want to do that. Oh, I went on the wrong one. Metal variation and this one here. So this one is perfectly, like you can see like a mirror, okay? We don't want that. We want to keep it relatively soft, right? When you're reflecting, right? There you go, that looks much better. And then let me get my metal variation to be up a little bit higher so we get a little bit of stress there. Just a little bit. Okay, let me see if I can get that just the way I want it here. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of time. That looks good. And you know, the higher you go, the darker it will look too in your renders. So if it's too dark when you do your renders, then you can go back and make those changes. At this point, hairline density and brush strength and all that stuff won't really matter because we're really not showing that brush stroke anymore. Now, how do we get a texture on this can? This is the fun part. This is pretty cool. You used to be able to have to go into Photoshop and put the texture map on yourself. We're going to go to 1001 and we're going to add the texture directly to this object. To do that, I've got to go to the layer and I'm going to click on fill layer. Okay, this fill layer now is going to allow me to add a texture directly to the base color. So what I'm going to do is I don't want a normal map, so I'm going to turn that off. I don't need a metal map. Okay, turn that off. I don't need a roughness map, so I'm going to turn that off. And I don't need a height. We're just going to use the color. Okay, that's very cool. I'm going to go to, in this line here, you can see that we have our materials, our library. Back all the way across, we have this what's called texture. Okay, you can drag and drop your texture in here if you wanted to, or you can import it by clicking on the plus sign at the bottom. So you can drag and drop it in here, okay? Or you can just go in here and just click on plus. We're going to add a resource, and we need to kind of tell it where it is. So where is it? So let's go in here to Maya, projects, and then go down to my food can. And of course, my source images should be in here. So I'm going to do the one that I discussed in our video. I'm going to do the Mets, what do they want to call it? Yeah, Mets. Click on open. And we want to, it's not defined. So what is it? So undefined, we want to make it a texture. So click on texture. Where do we want to place it? We want to place it in the current session. Okay, and then import. And there it is. There's my dog food. Okay, so now all we have to do is take our texture and drag it into this empty spot where it says base color, uniform color. And there it is. So all we have to do is in the 2D, okay, we're looking at the 2D, we're going to go ahead and scale that down. Okay, let's go ahead and scale down from this point up at the top here. Okay, until it fits there, and the bottom is going to move around until it fits into that, and then we've got to do the side and this side as well. There we go. Do we want to see that label here? Maybe not. There we go. That looks good. Okay, just gotta move that down a little bit. All right. Okay, now the texture cuts off a little bit on the dog food here. I really don't like that, but you know, there's not much we can do about that. It's part of the image itself. So when you rotate around here, you can see that we've got that kind of cut off right there, which is not good. Okay, that looks pretty good. We've got our seam right there. And for the most part, it looks good. I like that. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and hold down the shift key and a right mouse button to kind of see how that texture looks across here. I'm going to have the bright spot right here on the can. I'm going to go into, I'm going to click on roughness and add the roughness to it, and I can flatten that out even more. Okay, now, I don't want it to be shiny, but I want to flatten it out even more than it is, so the texture will look correct. Okay. All right, I don't mind having a little bit of shininess. We can even probably put it right directly in the middle, like 0.5 might be good for paper. 0.5. There we go. We'll just type in 0.5. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to hold the shift key and just run the light over top of it. That looks pretty good. I'm going to run the light over top of it and see how that looks when I do that as well on this. There we go. That looks good. All right, I think it's ready for our texture export. You always want to save your texture. So save as. I usually put it right into where my project sets, and that's fine. So I'm going to call this food can, F-I-N. There we go. And save it in case I need to come back in here and make changes. Let's say I don't like the top of the food can. I want it to be super shiny and a little brighter. I could do that and just come back here and make those changes. Right now it's kind of a dull gray. In the metal color, I can actually change that to a little brighter, and that brightens it up a little bit. Just depends on what you are looking for, and you can go all the way to white if you want to. I'm going to keep it I'm going to make it a little bit brighter, and that's it. And then I think I'm ready. And since I made that change to the can, I probably need to go to Save Scene As and just click on Food Can Finished, save it. We'll just save it right over top of it. And now we're going to go to File, and we're going to go to Export Textures. Export Textures. Okay, where do we want to place the textures? This is important. So I'm going to click on here. documents and Maya and projects, and scroll down to where I see a food can and source images. Okay, so select folder, and then PBR metallic roughness, we want that to be, scroll up into Arnold Udom Legacy Standard. That's what we want. Dilation should be infinite. Let's just keep it on that one. Everything PNG looks good. Output textures, we want to be Arnold Udom Legacy Standard. We don't need the emissive maps. We don't have any glowing maps. We'll turn that off. We don't have any height maps. We're going to turn that off. So we just need the 4. I'm going to click on list of exports, and those are the 4 that we need. Go back to settings and click on export. Depending on your processor, it should be pretty quick to save out. So it's done already. And for this video, we are finished. So we're going to move on into Maya and add the textures, and then light and render. All right, I'll see you in the next video.